Welcome in, everybody, to the Sunday edition of NBA Live here at FTNDaily.com, presented to you, as always, by Superdraft Daily Fantasy. My name's Zach Graham, a.k.a. Kawhisenberg DFS, and I'm alongside my good buddy, watching his Green Bay Packers, I'm sure, on one of his many monitors in front of him, Joe Metz. Joe, how you doing?
Good. I can't complain. NFL slate is as big of a mess as everyone expected it to be, and we dive right into a bigger mess of an NBA slate. After multiple revisions and submissions for the first look article, I'm ready to dive into 6 games instead of 9.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you and I were kind of talking throughout the afternoon, like, man, it's a shit show, right? And we've said that about, I don't know how many NBA slates in a row. But for the content purposes, 6 games on a Sunday, certainly easier than a large 9-game slate. The NBA pretending like this is a Wednesday or something. So the COVID protocols have had their say. Down to 6 games, kind of an interesting structure with the start times now. 3 of the 6 will go off at 6 Eastern, right at main slate lock, and then a 2-hour break. And the second set of 3 games on this 6-game main slate will tip off at 8 Eastern. So we'll have a nice little break in there to sit back, watch the end of the afternoon NFL games, watch the early 3 NBA games, and then we'll be back around for that late slate lock as well. But, Joe, we'll go through these 6 games, game by game. There's going to be some names in our conversation today that, you would never think you would talk about on a December 19th NBA slate. But as I pull up DraftKings, for instance, if you have just the all tab or the utility tab open, I see 1, 2, and I'll give Damien Lillard, I'll give 2.5 because he's barely on my window here. The rest of the player pool is out. So up top, there's very limited options, and obviously we'll get into all the inactives as we go here. So I guess without further ado, let's jump in. Miami Heat visiting the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, some news here. Jimmy Butler still out for this Miami team. Obviously, Bam Adebayo also still out with that UCL surgery. Caleb Martin, Markieff Morris, that whiplash, man. It's a bitch.
19 games in a row now he's missed?
Come on, man. Okay. Oladipo's still out. And then the news that we're really waiting on here is the status of Tyler Herro, who remains questionable with that quad contusion. And then Marcus Garrett also questionable with a bruise on his left eye. Other side of this game, Hamidou Diallo is available alongside Corey Joseph, who's gotten a couple DNP CDs lately, seemingly out of this rotation now, which is pretty interesting, especially since this team is now even more shorthanded than normal. Kelly Olynyk remains out, and we talked about last week, Jeremy Grant out 6 weeks with that thumb sprain. So I guess let's start with the home team here, since we're really not waiting on any Detroit news. Cade Cunningham's been fantastic since Jeremy Grant went out, cracking 52-plus DK points in 2 of those 3 games since Grant went down. So at 8.4 on DK, 1.3x on Superdraft. And you can get Cade at 7.9K on FanDuel as well. Is he a priority for you today?
I'm not going to call him a priority, but a very, very – he's definitely someone I will target in one lineup, not necessarily a lineup block. My sole concern with Cade is the pace, because Miami runs at an egregiously slow pace, especially oddly even slower with Jimmy Butler and Bam out. But I don't necessarily think that matters on this kind of slate or the slates that we're going to have for the next week, simply because you can get whoever you want. So Cade being live for a triple-double, as we've talked about slate after slate, his efficiency is kind of rearing, turning a corner, for lack of a better word. And with Jeremy Grant out, we are seeing a spike in just about everything across the board. So I like Cade a lot. He is my favorite option on this Pistons team. I'm still a little bearish to go back to Sadiq Bey, knowing that ownership is probably going to be inflated now, especially after the massive game he had, I believe it was 2 games ago. But then you look at his backcourt, like you mentioned, Corey Joseph out of the rotation, seemingly because of Saban Lee's production lately.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I would relate it to. But none of these other options, like Killian Hayes, doesn't interest me that much. Isaiah Stewart, so if I am targeting a Piston, it's wholeheartedly going to be Cade.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Sadiq Bey, right? Who's had one dud game. I think that first game when Jeremy Grant was out, we all kind of pushed some more chips than normal in on Sadiq and 9 fantasy points in that one against Brooklyn. Then the next game he came out and gave us 50 DraftKings points. And to me, Joe, like Sadiq is a really strong play here still. I don't think a ton of people are going to get there because I think we're going to have a lot of now like people rushing to the Kings. There's a lot of good plays in that game on both sides, Spurs and Kings. A couple of the other games we're going to talk about, and I think there's such a sour taste in everybody's mouth, not just from Sadiq Bey burning the field when he was highly owned against Brooklyn 3 games ago, but just the entire season, right? This guy was sub 5K on DraftKings less than a week ago, and that was for good reason because he had not been producing at the rates that we were accustomed to in his rookie year and that we needed at his price. So he was good again yesterday. They played the matinee game against Houston, so that was a showdown slate, not a ton of coverage on that across the industry. So kind of quietly another 38 DK from Sadiq Bey last night, but against Houston, right? So like Miami, a different beast, even with Jimmy and Bam out. So I think your point well taken. Maybe we don't rush to play Sadiq Bey. I agree with you that Cade would be my priority there. I mean, what about the rest of this roster? Like it feels kind of like we're spinning the Pistons guard roulette wheel with Saban Lee, Hamidou Diallo, Frank Jackson, Killian Hayes. I think at 3-5 now, Killian's my favorite target there. But I don't expect him to get, over 30 DK again like he did yesterday against the Rockets.
Yeah, I think these guys are viable on this slate, especially with the slate cutting from 9 to 6 games. But there are a couple options. Like a lot of this value across the board has been priced up because we've had it for 2-3 games now. But there are a few pieces, like, at point guard specifically, Isaiah Thomas sticks out at one that even though he might play less minutes than Killian Hayes, the usage rate is astronomically higher. His permanent production's higher. So I think I would still opt for someone like an Isaiah Thomas over a Killian Hayes. But in cash games, I think Killian Hayes, if you are projecting him for 30-plus minutes, makes for a very, very strong play.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I feel like I'm not going to call you crazy if you've got, I don't know, Hamidou Diallo in there. Any of these guys can go off. But I just think you're playing with fire on a slate where there's more sure values in the 5 other games that remain there. Unless you've got something else from the Pistons, let's go ahead and talk Miami here. And I think this Harrow news is really important because if he's in, I don't have a ton of interest in this team as a whole, even in a good matchup. I believe 8-point favorites. Let me make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn here. 7 down to 7. I think I saw it at 8 earlier, but Miami 7-point road favorites here. But if Harrow is out, I think you can pay up for Kyle Lowry. Probably not my favorite way still to spend 8K plus on DraftKings, but he's a really solid play on Superdraft where I believe he's still 1.3. Yeah, Lowry picking up the extra 30% boost over there. But I'm going to have a lot more interest in guys like Gabe Vincent, maybe even Max Strus comes into play then if Harrow remains out. But I think Vincent would be my target there. And in the front court, Dwayne Dedmon, I think either way is a solid play, but doesn't jump off the page to me.
Yep, completely agree. I think if Tyler Harrow were in, Dwayne Dedmon would be my favorite play on the team if I do play anyone. If he's out, though, I kind of still think it is Dwayne Dedmon because you look at the Heat team relative to the other teams on this slate. We've had this value for a much longer time because Jimmy Butler and Bam aren't out because of COVID. Bam tore his UCL 2.5 weeks ago. Jimmy's been out ever since then too. Tyler Harrow's been in and out. So DraftKings has reasonably priced up these guys. Like Gabe Vincent sitting at 5.5. Max Strus is still a little more affordable at 4.5, but obviously becomes hard to use if Tyler Herro's and Duncan Robinson at 4.6. Like these guys aren't their sub 4K guys that they were a week ago. But Dwayne Dedmon, 5.1, yeah, his price is up there a bit, but he isn't like the Tyler Herro news doesn't affect him. We've seen this ceiling twice in the last 4 games where he's top 40 DK points. prime for a double-double, and this is an exploitable front court with Isaiah Stewart's your last big man left. So those two should keep each other near the rim too. So traditional center matchup for Dwayne Dedmon. If I'm forced to go somewhere on Miami, assuming Tyler Hero's in, it'd be Dedmon.
So if Hero is out though, like does Gabe Vincent slide into priority territory for you? Because for me, like I'm looking at the last two games, like obviously the game log looks nice, but you check his rates and the usage is massive over the last two games.
I know.
I think at 5.5, even like he's only point guard eligible on DraftKings, and the multiplier came down to 1.65 on Superdraft, but
okay.
I think I still like him a lot if Harrow's out on DK because we've seen 31.5 and 31.8% usage in the last two games. And he's been shooting really well, but I don't know if he's expensive enough where we should discard him yet if Harrow's out.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think the price hike would do us a favor with ownership. Like he has a couple things working against him. The price hike, the fact that he's only point guard eligible, not even shooting guard eligible. And the ambiguity surrounding Tyler Herro should keep his ownership pretty suppressed until up to lock. So I like him a lot. If Tyler Herro is ruled out from an ownership standpoint, I think I'd rather go Gabe Vincent than Max Strus just because of ownership with the recency bias towards Strus, who like he is going to get his shots up if Tyler Herro isn't in, but he's not going to shoot 8 for 11 from 3 every game. Like that's an unconscious level. Like there are outliers here. And you mentioned the 30% plus usage rate for Vincent. He has 30, I believe he has 26 shots in the last two games. I might be
36.
36. Holy cow.
Yeah.
36 shots in each of in total in the last two games, 34 plus minutes in each of the last three. I think Vincent is a more reliable target, and his price reflects that. So if the ownership's going to be lower, just give me Gabe Vincent on a slate. Like you mentioned, there's value everywhere, so the price doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else from this game, or are you good to move on?
No, I think we're going to move on. I mean, Kyle Lowry is a fine spend up if Tyler Herro's out, but at the same time, even in that case, I don't think he'd be a necessity by any means.
Let's move to the Blazers visiting the Memphis Grizzlies. CJ McCollum's still out, although I think we got some good news on his collapse lung. I think he's going to be back within the next week or two. So that's good. Cody Zeller also still out with a patellar fracture. Dennis Smith Jr. is in. But with his price and Damian Lillard back, Anthony Simons back, Norman Powell there, not somebody that we're interested in today. On the Memphis side, still kind of the same cast of characters out. Brandon Clark, Sam Merrill, John Morant, Zaire Williams. Santi Aldama will join them on the bench today. Right calf soreness for the rookie there. So if we start with the visiting Blazers, you've still got Larry Nance sub 5K on DraftKings, Nas Little in the low 4Ks as well. Youssef Nurkic has dropped back down under 7K. But Joe, I'm looking at the sub 10K Damian Lillard, who's kind of come back into his own with CJ McCollum out. So maybe we see him regress back to the more like an 8K player is what he's been all year in terms of his production. But I think the price tag is now warranted for the extra opportunity here and the extra minutes. Obviously saw in overtime against Phoenix a couple games ago, but hasn't been below 37 minutes in any of his last 4 games since he came back from resting that abdomen injury. And 43 real points in that great matchup against the Hornets the other night at 9-7. Is Dame a priority for you when we have, only a few options to spend up on tonight?
If I'm up in that range, it's Damian Lillard. Like what's odd is, his game, like if you're just looking at his fantasy score game log, like 38 floor game against Memphis. Like otherwise it's getting to a point where like, okay, this is looking like the Damian Lillard of last year. But it's odd because it's strictly from a volume standpoint. Aside from last game where he shot 63% from the field, like his efficiency has still been god awful. Like he shot under 40% in 7 of his last 10 games. What he's doing now though to kind of buoy the lack of efficiency, for lack of a better word, is the peripheral production. Like he has 8 or more assists in 2 of the last 3 games. We saw an 11 rebound game a couple games ago. So I do think Damian Lillard is a very strong play. His over 3.5 threes is one of my favorite prize picks on the slate. So I like that one quite a bit. But if I am spending up because of how few options there are, Damian Lillard is one of the top ones. Like I'd much rather pay 9.7 for Lillard than I would 10.4 for Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you on that.
I don't have to convince you to do that.
And I don't have to convince you. So
let's
talk about Youssef Nurkic, because cheapest price in this month of December at 6'8" on DraftKings, massive foul trouble last time out against the Hornets, only saw 15 minutes. But the previous two games, like the Phoenix game was overtime, but he still got 34 in regulation, which I think was the season high. Followed it up with 31 minutes against this same Memphis team, albeit at home. So now with the price discounted a little bit from where it has been, is Youssef Nurkic, is that somebody that you're targeting today, or are we just going elsewhere?
Nurkic makes me really nervous, and I'm sure he does for everybody. Like, I typically end up playing Nurkic more on FanDuel because his price has been hovering between 6 and 6.5 all season. But even then, like 21 or less minutes in 2 of the last 3. He's only recorded at least 30 minutes in 3 of the last 6. Like, it's very obvious his coaching staff has a very short leash with him. They've expressed concerns about his durability and his endurance, and he's a foul-prone player. Where, like, as I never thought in December we'd be saying this, but like his price is enticing, but I'd rather save 2K. I'd rather save 3K and play Chimezie Metu on FanDuel. As crazy as that sounds, I think there's more minute security there. And his per minute production, like you look at his per 36-minute production, it's very, very comparable to Youssef Nurkic because of all these guys out.
Sure.
I'm very hesitant to take a risk on his minutes on a slate where one wrong play can sink your entire lineup. But to your point, like, he has an astronomical ceiling. So I can't argue that. I'm not going to argue against someone playing him. I just don't know if I feel comfortable.
Yeah, no, I think I'm right there with you. I think I'd rather play him on a site like Superdraft, where you're getting him at the 1.35x multiplier. But even then, he's center only. And I think there's other centers like a Karl Anthony Towns who we'll get to. Chimezie Metu is center only there as well. He's just not a priority for me. And I think I might have even just more interest in the minute security of somebody like Larry Nance, who's still sub 5K on DraftKings and should see, barring some crazy foul trouble, 30 plus minutes here. And he's been fine, a little bit up and down. But again, the minute security, I think if you're attacking this Portland front court, is certainly with Nance Jr. rather than Nurkic. Do you like Larry Nance tonight, or is he just kind of a secondary play?
I do like him. I think I've been on the Larry Nance train, especially with his dual position eligibility on both sites. It's small forward, power forward on FanDuel, power forward, center on DraftKings. But with 2 games in a row with 30 or more minutes, the production hasn't been exactly where we want it to be, but that's simply just from a lack of volume. I think Memphis is they're not running as fast without John Morant, but still a faster paced team, top half in the league. I think Larry Nance matches up well with an athletic big like a Jaren Jackson. So I do, if you're looking sub 5K, I think you can do a lot worse than him. That said, he's not my favorite option down here, but I'll play him.
How about any of the other front court options? Like we talked at length about Damian Lillard, but Norman Powell priced up still a little bit. Anthony Simons there now sub 5K on DraftKings. We already talked about Dennis Smith Jr. out of our player pools, but also like Nas Little getting a good amount of minutes on the wing. Like, are there any other targets here for you from the Blazers?
Yeah, Norman Powell for 6'3" on FanDuel, I think is still a very, very reasonable price as long as CJ McCollum's out. Like, he obviously had the quote-unquote down game with only 14 in his last game in Charlotte, but look at this man's minutes. You look at his last 7 or 6 games, 4 of them over 40 minutes. The lowest he's dropped in that span is 38 minutes. He's on the court, and he's essentially operating in the offensive role that CJ McCollum had. And we saw him do this late in this, like right before he went from Toronto to Portland. He was on a tear, just like this, where we've seen this in the past. It's reliable enough. At 6'3", I think he's a great mid-tier play, guard forward eligible on FanDuel. And I think Nasir Little on FanDuel as well is also a fine play at 5'4". The only knock is that he is small forward only, but on a site that rewards stocks, a player that's had at least 2 stocks in 2 of his last 4 last game, like, you can get an outlier game from him and be fine for 5'4".
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And a couple questions here, Joe, that I responded to in the FTN Daily NBA Discord channel, but I wanted your input as well. Jay Wynn's asking on Superdraft, 2 center-only guys, Chimezie Metu at 1.7, Karl Anthony Towns at 1.1. If you only got one center spot, if you're running one lineup, which guy are you going with?
Oh,
I love both of them.
I do too. That depends on format for me. I think if you're playing the big GPP, I think I'd go Metu.
Yeah.
Like you look at the multiplier at 1.6, he puts up 40 or 45 raw. He's going to top Karl Anthony Towns. But the thing is, Karl Anthony Towns, obviously, I think in cash games, you want to take that 1.1, knowing that he has a chance for 60 raw if the game goes right. So I think if it's a cash or very small single entry, I'd go Karl Anthony Towns. Anything else, I'd actually go Metu.
We are in lockstep there, almost word for word what I typed in the chat to Jalen, so that's nice.
Pull up the Discord.
Josh chiming in asking Isaiah Thomas or Devin Vassell. Obviously, we'll get to both the Spurs and the Lakers. Both of those guys, strong values with their situations today.
Mm-hmm.
I think I lean Isaiah Thomas, but it's very close. I like both guys.
I in a placeholder have both. But I do think I lean IT strictly from the usage standpoint. Like he's going to come off the bench and take so many damn shots. Like Devin Vassell is still starting alongside players that take shots more than he does. So I lean IT, but I have both. So I love both of them.
Sure. And then UNC asking, can we go over the 10, Joe, that I have for Trey Burke when we get to the Mavericks? Of course we can.
Ooh,
UNC.
I like that.
Yeah, Steelers fan. Good day for me and my buddy Steelers fan there, who I found out we were born like literally 2 weeks apart. Both September 90 babies. So me and Steelers fan 0023 in the chat. He's asking Lillard or LaMelo Ball. I think, like, honestly, I'm leaning slightly towards LaMelo, but Joe, like, that may just be my bias because I love LaMelo. Would you lean Lillard or LaMelo in that scenario?
That's another really tough one. I think I lean Lillard simply from the fact that it's very clear LaMelo is still getting back into game shape. 29 minutes last game. My concern here, like obviously Phoenix is not the defensive unit they were last year. They're improving, and Chris Paul is still a fine defender, but I think Chris Paul is more of a defender that he's pesky and he gets in your head now more than he locked people down like he did in his prime. But my concern with this game is that these are the two fastest paced teams in basketball. So if the conditioning is a concern for LaMelo Ball, while it's typically a strength in a high tempo matchup, like that could be a negative for him in this game. So I lean Lillard.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Like obviously we saw those two teams, but like you said, we saw those two teams play. Lillard had 37 minutes to LaMelo's 29. Was any of that? I didn't get a chance to watch that game. It doesn't seem like, to your point, that it was more conditioning, because I noticed earlier I was going through the game logs that he missed a good chunk of that third quarter, went out way earlier than the rest of the team. Were there any comments that I missed from like Coach Borrego or anything about that conditioning, or is it just kind of we're reading the game logs and play-by-play, et cetera?
I think it's more so the latter. Like I'm looking at the game flow right now, and he played. It looks like he played almost 10 minutes in the first quarter, and then
first half was strong.
First half was very strong. Like he played almost 20. I think he had about 20 first half minutes. That's a lot. And then there's this big gap where he starts the third quarter, plays 4 minutes, and then doesn't come in until the 6:40 mark in the fourth.
Yeah.
The game got out of hand a little bit at that point. I don't know if they were like, this game's getting out of hand. Let's just give LaMelo a breather. If we come back, we come back. And then he came back in the game. So I think they lost by less than 10. But it's just a situation because we haven't heard anything. I don't know what to expect. And this is a player that we saw have issues with his minutes early in the season. So I'm just operating with a bit of an abundance of caution.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. This is just my guess looking at this. We saw no Ish Smith in the first half of that Portland game, and the fact that LaMelo went out so quick and then Ish played big minutes in the second half. Maybe it was halftime where LaMelo was like, hey, I need to get my breath after my first rotation, and then Ish came in and played decent. So, I guess we'll see. I'm a little bit higher on LaMelo than you, I think, but certainly something to take into consideration when making a choice up top, certainly between those two guys. Let's talk Memphis now. We talked about the same five guys or same four guys that are out and Aldama joining them. Nobody on DraftKings priced over Jaren Jackson Jr.'s 6.6K. Dylan Brooks, Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones right below him. out of those kind of top four, who stands out for you?
I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go back to Dillon Brooks. Like, he's shown this level of consistency that scares the shit out of me right now.
Yeah.
But if people aren't going to play him, I will. Like, look at how many shots he's taking. 15 and 27 minutes 3 games ago, 16 and 37, 20 and 34 last game. He's going, as long as he's on the court, he's going to shoot. And he's only accumulated 6 total fouls over his last 3 games. So I think that is a step in the right direction. But 6'3", I think, is a very, very reasonable price. Like, you have to think that if he's on the court for 30 minutes, he's almost a shoo-in for 6x. And that's what we've seen, these last 3 games. So Portland is an exploitable matchup. It's not one where I think there's going to be a wing that he's going to have to play extremely aggressively from a defensive standpoint. Like, Norman Powell will probably be the primary defender on, but that's not someone that I'm worried about slashing the lane a ton, things like that. So I think Dillon Brooks is my favorite. But Jaren Jackson at 6'6", that's a really, really nice price as well. The negatives with Jaren Jackson are similar to Dillon Brooks. He just has, and with Santi Aldama out, I think we could see an extra minute or two, because Aldama was getting not like legitimate minutes, but I mean, he was getting anywhere between 5 and 13 minutes a game. I want to say, let me pull up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like 5, anywhere between 4, 13. Like, those are going to go somewhere at the 4. And like, I don't think they're going, especially with Brandon Clark out. I don't necessarily think they're going to give someone like Killian Tilly all these minutes.
Right.
Xavier Tillman's more of a 5, and he would probably benefit more from Steven Adams out. So I like Jaren Jackson. He's probably a number 2 for me behind Dillon Brooks, followed by probably Tyus Jones at 5'6" the price I like quite a bit against a ball dominant point guard that can turn the ball over.
Yeah, I don't really differ on any of that. How about some of the cheaper guys like a DeAnthony Melton, right? He's up to 4.8, and he's had some big games of late, but shooting it really well. Like, he's one of those guys that's really shot dependent, like 7 of 11 in his 23 minutes last game, 37 DK, 1 of 4 in his 21 minutes the game before. It just kind of shows like he's a feast or famine type play. And for me at 4.8 and with the other options on the slate, I don't think I would have any in 20 lineups, just because the minutes hasn't exceeded 23 minutes over his last 4 games. We've got a similar rotation projected here tonight. So not for me, but like, what about Melton? Like Kyle Anderson maybe too at 5-1. He's seen elevated minutes in the closer games recently, but they've been involved in some blowouts too.
Yeah, Melton, I get the play. But I think on these COVID slates where there is a lot of abundant value below him, I just don't know if I feel comfortable with it. Same can kind of be said for Kyle Anderson. His price makes me a little uneasy at 5-1, given there are so many paths to him right now to get 30 minutes, and he's just not getting there. I don't know does Taylor Jenkins just not have plans for Anderson to be a significant part of his rotation? He's had 20 plus minutes in 2 of his last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games. I know he dealt with an injury for a while, but if he gets the minutes, he's fine. But I don't know if I want to pay 5-1 for him. Again, like, if you're looking at power forward, just give me Chimezie Metu.
Yeah, I think the injury was part of it. I also think game script has played a part in some of his kind of muted minutes over the last couple of games. But again, at the price with some of the other options on this team, in this game, and on the slate as a whole, Kyle Anderson's certainly not a priority tonight. I think we're probably good here to move to the last of these 6 p.m. Eastern games. My Spurs going out to visit Freshies Sacramento Kings, another team that's extremely shorthanded tonight. The Kings, not the Spurs. That is, the Spurs will be without Doug McDermott. I guess some dental work, had a tooth injury, so ruled out. None of the G League guys are up with the big league team, Kaycock, Primo, Wieskamp, etc. But the Kings, different story. Marvin Bagley, Terrence Davis, De'Aaron Fox, Louis King, Alex Lynn, Davion Mitchell, all in the protocols, and Rashawn Holmes ruled out with that eye injury. So let's start with the visiting Spurs. Obviously, a little bit easier to project, I think, because they have most of the team here. DeJounte Murray still just below that 10K mark on DraftKings. Everybody else in this team hasn't really shifted too much in price since we last talked, but with Doug McDermott out, the guys that stand out to me here are really Devin Vassell, number 1, and then 2, a secondary degree, Lonnie Walker at 4K, who had the big game, unfortunately, for the tanking hopes of the Spurs against the Jazz the other night of all teams. So for me, Joe, it's DeJounte Murray up top, Devin Vassell second at 4-1. And then I'm not going to call you crazy if you have a Derek White, a Jakob Poeltl, a Lonnie Walker, or even Keldon Johnson, I think, in this matchup against the Kings are all acceptable. But DeJounte and Devin Vassell, my two targets. Your Spurs take.
So you obviously don't twist my arm for DeJounte. The play I'm finding myself on the most though is Devin Vassell, simply from a construction standpoint. Like I am right now, my two spend ups have been Damian Lillard and Karl-Anthony Towns, which has kind of left me a little bit restricted with the rest. But I like DeJounte a lot. You never have to twist my arm, especially against such a depleted Sacramento team. Tyler Hero ruled out. We can obviously circle back to that, but like Devin Vassell isn't going to come out and get a ton of shots, but he's getting 22 to 25 minutes with a healthier rotation. Now you at least have Doug McDermott out. I think he's a legitimate shot for 30 minutes, and 4-1, that's a price where even a potential floor game is kind of baked into that. I do like Jakob Poeltl quite a bit, simply from the standpoint that like Poeltl being a somewhat more traditional center, obviously plays more minutes and he's more likely for 30 plus minutes against equally traditional centers. And you look at the opposite side with Tristan Thompson, not going to stretch the floor. Timothy Meto will probably, like, I believe when I was looking at Popcorn Machine this morning, he actually played alongside Tristan Thompson a ton. Started the 4 last game, doing the same today. So Tristan Thompson keeping Poeltl around the rim. I like Poeltl for 6'3" quite a bit as a mid-tier center.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Let's talk Kings before we kind of circle back to that Miami news. Marcus Garrett also available to play with Tyler Hero ruled out, but we talked about the Kings inactives just a minute ago. So we've got all the Kings available for under 7K. Tyrese Halliburton up top, then Harrison Barnes, Buddy Hield, and Chimezie Metu, who we've touched on a lot already. Halliburton is a play that I love. The minutes are up. He's seeing elevated usage, all kinds of opportunity for Tyrese with De'Aaron Fox out. So I love him, but then I think there's no issue getting to heavy amounts of Harrison Barnes, Buddy Hield, and Chimezie. Like almost everybody, especially in the backcourt, that's available for this team. They're certainly not short on bodies down low. With Metu, Tristan Thompson, Damian Jones. One of the few names that I don't know how to correctly pronounce, Nehemias Queta. Somebody correct me on that. But he got out there last game, right? And Mo Harkless is back for this team. So when you look at just this litany of names that, again, we didn't think we would be talking about in December NBA DFS, what stands out to you from the Kings?
So the Kings, Tyrese Halliburton and Chimezie Metu are in all my single entry lineups. Like those two, Chimezie Metu per 36 minutes this year is averaging nearly 15 points and 11 rebounds a game. We saw almost a mirrored stat line last game to that in I believe 36 minutes. 36 minutes, 18 points, 11 boards, 2 blocks. I'll give a couple free bets in this game. Like Chimezie Metu plus 330 to double-double, I think is a phenomenal play, seeing that him and Tristan Thompson are the only two center or big men really on this team. I don't have interest in Tristan Thompson, if I'm being honest. You might differ from me a little bit, but I can't find myself getting there. Tyrese Halliburton, the bet that I love is over 26.5 points, rebounds, and assists. He has a near 40% assist rate, 22% usage rate, with De'Aaron Fox, Terrence Davis and Marvin Bagley off the floor, and obviously there are more Kings off the Davion Mitchell off. So I like Tyrese Halliburton at 6'9" is a very very good price.
That's very nice.
I'm fine with Buddy Hield. If you're in that mid tier, I think I'd rather get up to Harrison Barnes. I think he provides a higher ceiling given what we saw earlier this year and the peripherals. But other than those guys, like I don't think I'm going to get to a Justin Robinson who was recently signed after being with the Bucks. I don't think I'm going to get to a Mo Harkless. I don't think I'm going to get to a Damian Jones, like any of those guys, just because of the value elsewhere. So I'm sticking to Halliburton, Metu, Barnes, and Hield.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. Just kind of those top 4 guys. And my 2 priorities on DK would be Halliburton and Metu. Revenge game for old Chimezie there. Taking on his original team that drafted him. Let's go ahead. I guess we'll touch on Miami, revisit what we said. If Tyler Hero is out, we have elevated interest in Gabe Vincent. Max Strus, I guess, would enter my pool, not a priority because his price is up. I'd rather play Duncan Robinson for $100 more on DraftKings. And I think Lowry, too, now a little bit more viable. But again, I would rather spend up for almost everybody else available above 8K on this slate. Anywhere you differ there now that Harrow is out?
No, I like the Duncan call. Do we think Duncan's downtick in minutes last game was a direct product of just Strus's unconscious shooting from the field?
Yeah, I mean, it was like Strus' career game last time, right?
Correct. So, I assume, yeah. Okay.
I mean, and it's tough, really, to get both of those guys on the court at the same time and
because they offer the exact same
defense.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. Again, these guys would be like having two little dogs on the court. Like, Jesus Christ.
I mean,
I think.
Go ahead.
He can hold himself. He can hold his own a little bit more, but Duncan Robinson's a lost puppy on defense.
Yeah.
I think Gabe Vincent is my favorite Heat player on this slate. Like that usage rate that you mentioned is no joke, especially 2 games in a row. Kyle Lowry's fine, but he's really, even with Hero out, taking a backseat scoring. He's dishing out just massive amounts of assists to Gabe Vincent, to Duncan Robinson and them. So I think I think my priority would be Vincent, Duncan, Strus, Lowry is the priority I would go.
Would you have Dedmon at the top for Miami still?
So I'm actually now moving off of Dedmon simply from a construction standpoint because I'm growing fonder and fonder of Karl-Anthony Towns. And this does not feel like a 2-center slate to me. But if I wasn't playing Towns, I think Dedmon would be my center of choice on the slate.
Sure. And somebody I'm also fond of in real life and on tonight's slate, Isaiah Thomas, are coming off his first game with the Lakers this season, played almost 22 minutes, took 12 shots. A pretty normal Isaiah Thomas game off the bench last time for the Lakers. And the Lakers, again, even more shorthanded tonight than they were against, I think it was Minnesota the other night, where Anthony Davis is hurt, and now he is out with that MCL sprain. Joining Kent Bazemore, Avery Bradley, Town Horton Tucker, Dwight Howard, Malik Monk, Austin Reeves on the health and safety protocols list. Kendrick Nunn comes off the protocols list, but remains out with that bone bruise. We actually have Trevor Ariza listed questionable. He may make his season debut for the Lakers tonight. But when you look at this roster, man, like LeBron 10-8, Westbrook 10-4, even with all those guys out, it's tough for me to get to Russ at that price. I'd rather spend up for LeBron. I'd rather spend up on almost anybody else in that price range tonight. And again, like the rest of this, like Isaiah Thomas, I think is my favorite option here. Rajon Rondo's back into the rotation now, so he's a little bit interesting, but tougher to get there with all the other value we have. So take me through the Lakers from your perspective.
I have a lot of perspectives on the Lakers.
Okay, but it's for this slate.
The rotations that Vogel ran last game were very, very interesting. Almost to a point where it's like, dude, are you trying to get yourself fired? At one point, he had Rajon Rondo, IT, and Russell Westbrook on the court at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? But I think we saw, 21 minutes out of IT last game. Again, this guy has not played professional basketball at this level in, 2 years now?
Yeah.
So 22 minutes as a floor feels pretty damn good for 3-9, understanding that if they need offense, especially with AD out now, I think he will continue to see his minutes ramp up to that 25 to 27 minute range. I don't know. I haven't seen what Kyle has him projected for today, but he would be per dollar my favorite option on this team. I also like 4-2 for Carmelo Anthony. I mean, I like that price a lot. I think that Devin Vassell is going to be a popular play. I think Carmelo Anthony is a great pivot at the forward spot if you're just using the forward spot, not the small forward spot. Obviously, we'll see an uptick in minutes, not just with Anthony Davis out. Taylor Horton Tucker remains out as well. He's going to shoot when he's on the court. And with Dwight Howard out too, DeAndre Jordan is I'm not saying that Melo's going to play center, but I think we could see the Lakers run small a little bit more simply because they can't run out DeAndre Jordan for 35 minutes. So I think that could shift their lineup down a little bit where we could see more Melo at the 3 or 4 with LeBron potentially being their small ball 5 in this game. So Melo, I think, is my favorite pivot off of Vassell, and I think you can argue playing him over Vassell. And then IT, my overall favorite play on the slate. LeBron, my favorite spend up. And I think I'd be, you know what? No, I'm not fine with Russell Westbrook. Those are the plays I like on the team.
Yeah, I mean,
what's your take on Westbrook? Or wow. Okay, no. Carmelo Anthony on the slate. We'll talk about Westbrook on a podcast at some point that we haven't already.
Oh man, this doesn't have anything to do with tonight's slate, but Josh Richardson has re-entered the protocols listed out tomorrow. We'll see if that game even plays with the Sixers canceled tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, Carmelo, like, I think he's fine. Like you mentioned, the price 4.2 is cheap enough where I'm fine to play him. But even on this team, like, I would rather play Isaiah Thomas. I think it's easier for him, even at this point in his career, to score fantasy points. I'd rather play DeAndre Jordan for the minimum. I know, positional constraints might just make that kind of just not really a good comparison, but he doesn't stand out as much as I thought he would to me. But if you're going off Kyle's projections, and I think I would probably trust that just over my own biases against Carmelo Anthony, he projects as a fine value. So he's acceptable, but not somebody that I would target probably even in my 20 lineups. I don't think I would have that much. On the Chicago side,
I do like the DeAndre Jordan call a lot, though. Before we move on, DeAndre Jordan's score minimum. Like, I don't see any way he gets less than 20 minutes in this game. At stone minimum, it's kind of hard not to like DeAndre Jordan quite a bit.
Yeah. Again, it's just that he's center only, and there's a lot of centers that we're interested in today.
Yeah.
So the Chicago side, a lot of moving parts on the Bulls side. DeMar DeRozan is back. Javonte Green is back. Derrick Jones Jr. is back. Kobe White is back. Troy Brown Jr., Ayo Dosunmu, Alize Johnson, Zach LaVine. They're all in the protocols. Patrick Williams out for the year. Matt Thomas also back available for the Bulls tonight. Devin Booker is confirmed in for Phoenix. We'll talk about that. We talked about Josh Richardson. Heat, I know the lineup was posted. Pistons will start Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham, Hamidou Diallo, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart. So no surprises there. So Joe, when we look at this Bulls roster with so many moving parts, what stands out to you as DeMar DeRozan returns and a couple other guys go out?
So I don't hate DeMar DeRozan, but 9-4 when I'm so high on the trio of Damian Lillard, DeJounte Murray, and Karl-Anthony Towns, it's just not a price I want to pay on this slate. I honestly think my favorite play on the Bulls is Kobe White for 3.5. And I know that sounds kind of bold, but again, he hasn't played in nearly 3 weeks. So I think we could see a bit of a loose minutes restriction, but Troy Brown's out, Patrick Williams out, Ayo Dosunmu out on the wing, Zach LaVine out. They need scoring off the bench. So 3.5, I think you can do a lot worse. I'd still rather play Isaiah Thomas and both him and Trey Burke, but I think Kobe White, there's an angle for him to be very successful on this slate.
Yeah.
And Nikola Vucevic, again, if you're looking for a pivot off of Cat, it's Vucevic for me. Like, this Lakers team all season has gotten absolutely destroyed by centers, like on the glass, just in interior. The loss of Anthony Davis, while he plays more 4, which we can argue all day why I think that's just dumb. Like, that's not going to help them. So I think Vucevic is in a good spot too. And with the state of this Lakers team, this game still has potential to get out of hand, but this is not a slate where I'm trying to predict blowouts anyways.
Yeah. And that makes sense to me. So like, even though I think the Bulls are up now to like 6-point favorites here at home against the Lakers. It doesn't make me really excited to roster DeMar DeRozan or Nick Vucevic above 9K. But they're fine to play. I think Lonzo Ball is also kind of in that price purgatory for me at 7.6 with DeMar back. Kind of the same thing with Alex Caruso. I think if I'm getting anywhere, it's probably just taking the shot on Kobe White at 3.5. But even then, like, I'd much rather get up to IT, and we'll get to Trey Burke in the next game. I'd much rather get to Trey Burke. Anything else for you from this Lakers Bulls game?
No, I think we're going to move on. I think Caruso's a fine play, but if you're looking at that range at guard, like, give me Gabe Vincent just about any day of the week.
Dallas at Minnesota. Some more Dallas news here. Reggie Bullock in the health and safety protocols. Josh Green also joining him there. Frank Ntilikina, Luka Doncic, Willie Cauley-Stein also out for this team. So shorthanded in the backcourt. Obviously, we've been on Jalen Brunson for a while. He's at 7-1 on DK. Porzingis also 8.8 here against the Timberwolves. Is Tim Hardaway Jr. going to finally crack the starting lineup? I think that's something we need to look for. He's at 5'9". Dorian Finney-Smith priced up 4.8. And then the guy that, I'm all over tonight, Trey Burke at 3.8. With all those guards out that I mentioned, like, who is left to take minutes from Trey Burke off the bench now? Like, Sterling Brown is back, but I think Trey Burke is going to be the one that benefits the most from these guys hitting the COVID list or being otherwise out. Last two games, we've seen 22 and 23 minutes from Trey Burke. And to me, the most important thing is he got those minutes in a close game against the Lakers 4 nights ago. So your take on the Mavericks, and are you with me with the Trey Burke love?
I like Trey Burke a lot. I think I still like Isaiah Thomas a bit more.
Okay.
But like Josh Green going on the COVID list helps him quite a bit. Sterling Brown, you mentioned being back, could eat into his minutes a little bit, but they bring very different things to the table. So when you're looking at a guy off the bench, when you need a spark, like Sterling Brown's not that guy. He's a I don't even say 3-and-D kind of guy. He's a low volume 3-point shooter that can offer some perimeter defense. Like Trey Burke doesn't offer any defense, but he will chuck up as many shots as you need him to, and oftentimes like push the pace in the game. So I like Trey Burke a lot. I also like looking at Kyle's projections. Let me pull it up so I don't misquote. I saw it earlier. I mean, he's projecting for 5.5% ownership on DraftKings right now. That if I were guaranteed that he'd even be sub 10%, that is a phenomenal play. Isaiah Thomas is only projecting for 2.8%. So both of these guys feel like really, really, really strong plays when the sub 4K group is kind of gravitating towards like the DeAndre Jordans of the world and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't seen those ownership projection numbers yet.
Those are low.
I think they'll probably end up a little bit higher. Just my own opinion on it. But again, even if they're just a little bit higher, I think it's really easy to get way over the field there. I would feel great about that. This Minnesota side is still without Anthony Edwards, Taurean Prince also in the protocols. And then right before we went live, Josh Okogie joining them on the injured list. So you've got Karl-Anthony Towns against a Dallas team that gives it up in the front court, 9-6 on DK. I think he is my favorite spend up on this slate. I just don't see anybody on the other side of the ball that has a hope of guarding Karl-Anthony Towns. Again, if he brings that same type of juice that he did against the Lakers the other night. I know I'm not the only one to say if Karl-Anthony Towns plays like this, he would be a much better player. But I think, we saw a little bit of that invigoration against the Lakers the other night. Hopefully it wasn't just for the cameras for the nationally televised game. I like Cat a ton. And I think you have to like D'Angelo Russell a lot too at 7-4. So talk to me about the Wolves from your perspective.
Yeah, I do. I think 7-4 is a great price for D'Angelo Russell, especially if you want. I don't personally recommend making a strong effort to get off of like the Tyrese Halliburton chalk, but if you do want to if you're running 5 lineups and you don't want 5 Halliburton, I think getting money to go up to D'Lo and 1 or 2 of them is fine. But Karl-Anthony Towns is also my favorite overall spend up on the slate. I love the energy that he brought when backing down AD and just running down the court saying he's too small. Like, that was awesome. But like you said, like, it's not just a dumb narrative. Like, we don't see that. We see that like 30% of the time from him. He could arguably be the best. I'm going to exclude Jokic because he's not going to be better than Jokic. He would be the second best center in basketball if he played like that every night. So he's my favorite spend up. He's playing a beatable interior that can struggle on the glass, but also has enough centers to keep him towards the rim on the defensive end. He's going to shoot, especially with Anthony Edwards off. He'll get more shots. So I have no problem at all with Karl-Anthony Towns. The other T-Wolf I have interest in is Malik Beasley because he's still sub 5K. I think that's still a bargain.
Yeah, I agree. And Beasley also picking up, let me pull up his multiplier because it's a pretty healthy multiplier with Anthony Edwards and these other guys out. Beasley still 1.85x over there on Superdraft. So I think he's strong on both DK and SD. Anything else from this game? You ready to move on to the last of these 8 p.m. Eastern tip-offs?
Let's move on to the Charlotte Phoenix game.
No surprises from the Spurs. DJ Murray, Derek White, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Jakob Poeltl. Again, Devin Vassell was announced starting before we went live. Charlotte visiting the Phoenix Suns. So a great matchup on paper. For Phoenix, they get Devin Booker back tonight from that injury. I mean, he's been out, what was it, hamstring for the last 3 weeks or so. So, highest team total on the slate, over 118 points projected for the Suns tonight, 7.5-point home favorites. But let's start with the visiting Hornets. Again, a team that's getting more and more healthy. You look up and down this roster on DraftKings, and holy shit, there's no red Qs or out or anything for this team. So
it's a normal game.
I know, right? LaMelo Ball, 9.5. Kind of the rest of these guys, Miles Bridges, Gordon Hayward, Kelly Oubre, especially Cody Martin, still priced up from their bout with COVID as a team. So for me, Joe, it's kind of, I like taking a shot on LaMelo. I'm not really scared of going back to him. I think the ownership's going to be low. But then outside of that, I think it's kind of taking a shot maybe on Mason Plumlee at 4-1. His services weren't really required for that long against Portland because Youssef Nurkic only got to play 15 minutes with that foul trouble. I think Plumlee is a little bit sneaky. You certainly won't have to play a ton of him to get over the field if you're running multiple lineups. And certainly on the late slate, I think he's a really sneaky value. So how are you breaking down the Hornets?
So I already talked about LaMelo Ball. I think dollar for dollar Plumlee would be one of my preferred options. What I keep finding odd, I've looked at this slate probably 4 times throughout the day, and I keep the total on the slate is on this game is very high. It's 2 teams in the top 6 in pace overall in the year. Charlotte with LaMelo back will be back to pushing the pace. Devin Booker is kind of a moot point in that regard, but I thought I'd have a lot more interest in this game on this slate, but I'm really finding myself not having interest because both of these teams are 2 of the healthier teams in the NBA right now, which is crazy to think about. So there's not a ton of opportunity relative to salary. So I think on the Charlotte side, like you talked about Mason Plumlee, I think being a strong contrarian play is a very, very good call. I think LaMelo Ball is fine, but of those 4 or 5 guys in the 9K range, I have him as my least favorite. But then you look at the rest of the team with Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, Miles Bridges, Ish Smith in them, Kelly Oubre. I think of these guys anytime Terry Rozier is sub 7K, I'm okay taking a shot on him. Minutes are volatile. Production is volatile, but in a tournament, the blow-up games he can have. So if you can get that at that price, I think that's fine. And then Gordon Hayward at 6'7". Minutes have been trending back in the wrong direction, but similar to Rozier, if you catch him in the right game, you're going to have a successful night. And in a game where I think they're going to need as much offense as possible, this could be the one. I'm just not going out of my way to prioritize. I have none of this game in my one lineup. So I think if I'm playing 3 lineups, I'd want some exposure, but I don't think you need to in one game or one lineup, excuse me.
Well, how about the Phoenix side? Because we kind of talked about how these guys are priced appropriately. Now that they're back healthy, a lot of these guys are priced for certain teammates to be out. So on the Phoenix side, I really don't I guess I'm in lockstep with you, dude. I don't have a ton of interest in this game, specifically the Phoenix side. I don't want to pay 9.3 for Chris Paul with Devin Booker back, and I don't want to pay 8.8 for Devin Booker coming off 2 or 3 weeks of not playing. So I think if I go anywhere here on Phoenix, it's DeAndre Ayton, but even then at 8.2, he's been great this season, and I think he can do well in the time that he'll get tonight, but I can't make him a priority. Do you differ at all?
No, I don't, because the thing is, DeAndre Jordan has been priced up to match his production with Devin Booker off the floor. That's going to take a substantial hit on the offensive end with Booker back. So I don't differ. These are expensive prices. Chris Paul, expensive, and he's going to see a step back from an offensive contribution standpoint, but he's still a fine cash game play. But with it being so easy to get to these other guards, I just don't think you need to. So I am kind of off the Suns as a whole. Booker being back really puts a huge damper on the Cam Johnson value. We still have the rotating door between, I guess, Johnson, Jay Crowder, and Mikal Bridges, which is one of the more frustrating ones to figure out in terms of not just minutes, because the minutes are pretty easy to predict, but just who's going to produce on any given night. Mm-hmm. So I'm okay punting the Suns on this slate. I think if you have, it'd probably take me 10 lineups to get to a Sun, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm probably right about there with you. It's tough if you're running, 20 to 150 lineups to completely avoid getting a little bit of a taste of any team that's going up against the Charlotte Hornets, but the prices just really make it tough. We've got about 3 minutes and change, or 3 minutes exactly until the main slate lock here. So we'll hit the Discord. I know I've answered, I think, all but two of the questions that are queued up here, but we can kind of go through some of those and talk them out. The two that we haven't answered yet, one from our buddy Alex here asking Lillard or DeJounte on FanDuel. I lean DeJounte for the extra $300 there. I love the matchup against Sacramento, but both of those prices are really attractive. I mean, 8-7 for Lillard is great. So where are you going between those two on FanDuel?
Am I allowed to say both?
Yeah,
I lean technically. I lean on FanDuel. I do lean DeJounte from an ownership standpoint, but I think you can make a lineup comfortably with both of them.
And you've got DeJounte shooting guard eligible there, so certainly some versatility in being able to roster him, and maybe some cheaper point guards, maybe a little Trey Burke action there as well. And then our guy Easy B asking Max Strus or Isaiah Thomas. I think that's a tough one with Harrow out. I mean, I would say, Easy, do you have any other Heat in there? Do you have any other Lakers? I think I would probably lean, if I had a Gabe Vincent, I would go Isaiah Thomas. If I'm spending up for a LeBron, or maybe I'm taking the Carmelo value, then I would lean to that Strus side. But I guess
I think I'm locked up with you.
I mean, in a vacuum, I think I'm just going to take Isaiah Thomas. Just both of those guys, proven scorers. But I just think there's more of a chance for Isaiah Thomas to get there tonight, rather than paying up a little bit more for Strus, who just came off a career game and probably higher owned because of it. He has no Heat or Lakers, so I think I'm going to lean the Isaiah Thomas side.
So am I. And I think, to your point earlier, I do prefer Duncan Robinson over Max Strus. Like, I have Duncan Robinson in my single entry is my only Heat player right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Max Strus scored 30 real points last game, right? 32.
Yeah, 32.
Excuse me, not to shortchange this guy, but before that, even we've seen this guy play 23 minutes, 16 DK, 21 minutes, 16 DK, right? 16 minutes, 5 DK. He certainly can get on top of that price, and guard forward eligibility is nice, but I think it's still Isaiah Thomas for me. Hopefully we're not just living in the past and trying to get one last whiff of that Isaiah Thomas nostalgia. Jay Craig coming in here asking Lamelo or Cade. I say, if you can't upgrade significantly with the extra money, I'll take my shot on Lamelo in that game. But I like both of those guys, and Cade has been fantastic since Jeremy Grant went out. Which way do you lean?
I think Cade, if you can reasonably use that salary to make a significant upgrade elsewhere. I have two quick questions that someone's saying. I answered one on stream, Duncan Robinson over Max Strus. Someone said, if I can only play one in a vacuum, Trey Burke or Isaiah Thomas. I mean, they're both good plays. Yeah, that's where you're leaning. I think I'm leaning that way too.
I mean, Trey Burke, we've seen it more recently, right? And Isaiah Thomas just burned the whatever G League team that was for 40 plus points. So obviously he can still put it in the basket. Didn't he put up 100 or something in some pro-am run over the summer? I don't know. He could still score it with the best of them. But I'll side with Trey Burke in a game that I think is probably going to be a little more competitive. And it's also I think you have to worry about the fact that Rajon Rondo was the one off the bench first. IT didn't come in until the second quarter in that last game. So it's Burke for me, and we're past lock here. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. We will check out some ownership here before we get out and let Joe go be a cheesehead up there in Wisconsin. But
Mark Andrews is dicing us up right now. It's 6 for 95 and 2 touchdowns at halftime.
Let's go. Hey, you know about my 53-man league, Joe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm in a wild card matchup, so I need all the Andrews.
While you're getting the ownership, I'm playing Chris Meany in the first round of our league for playoffs right now. Let's take a look here.
Yeah, pull it up. If
I'm projected to win by 16, so hopefully that sticks.
Nice. I think I was projected. I think I'm playing Brock
Let's take a look.
this
Yep,
week.
you are.
Yeah,
I mean, you're just crushing him.
Oh, I love to hear
Devontae Adams had a touchdown. Obviously helps your stack.
Perfect.
Debo had a rushing touchdown. Jeff Wilson rushing touchdown. Like you're doing okay.
Okay. All right. We will take that. So if anybody's been tuning in for the last hour and you're not an NBA subscriber here at FTN or not subscribed to FTN at all, you come check us out. The NBA package here includes our state-of-the-art optimizer. It covers every slate, every day, the proprietary player and ownership projections from Kyle Murray. He's getting some help from Alex Blickel as well, all kinds of tools. The NBA on-off splits, advanced DVP, the infamous FTN Daily NBA Premium Discord channel where we're answering all the questions leading up to lock and rankings from Fast Eddie Fear and myself every single day. The pricing starts at $49.99 per month, but you can use that code that's scrolling right below us, FTNTV, and that's going to get you 15% off your monthly package here. And that's good through the end of the season. So it's not just the discount for your first month signing up with us. If you sign up for the NBA package with that promo code, FTNTV, that's 15% off every month through the end of the NBA Finals. So come join us, come check us out, and you jump in that Discord, tag Joe, tag myself, let us know you're here because we would love to have you. Pulling up the ownership here, Joe, from the main tournament on DraftKings. This is only $150K in the prize pool on this NFL Sunday, but $50K up top. So let's see. You have any guesses?
The games, right? Well, yeah. I know the Kings game locked. Kings game, Heat game, and Blazers.
Cody Martin in the health protocols now.
Oh, there might be late news on this slate. There might be late news. Also, Josh in the chat saying, I think I duped you. Josh, I literally forgot to enter until, my time, 4:58. So I only made it into like $30 worth of the smallest entries. That's all that was left. So I don't think you might have duped me. Okay, so Kings game, Blazers game, and Heat game locked. It's got to be Chimezie Metu, right, for 4-8?
By 2%, it is Chimezie Metu, number one.
And am I guessing what he's at?
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess like 54?
62. 62%.
So someone else is 60% owned.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Dylan Brooks?
Oh, no. Dylan Brooks, number 6.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
I'll give you the cheat code here, and I think this is going to give it away. The top 4 are all Sacramento Kings.
Oh, Tyrese Halliburton.
Tyrese Halliburton, 60%. I'd say 59. Round down.
Buddy Hield, third. Harrison Barnes, fourth.
Those are the 4 that we talked about, and those 4 come in. Buddy Hield, 36. Harrison Barnes, 28. Here's where it actually gets tough. Who's number 5? And then we'll just read off some notables and get out of here.
So Brooks was 7. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
5. Gabe Vincent?
Gabe Vincent, 6. Very close.
Is Max Struss 5?
No.
Damn, that would have made me really happy not playing. So Gabe Vincent, 6. And what was Harrison Barnes' ownership?
Harrison Barnes was 28%. Gabe Vincent is 22.
Oh, it's not going to be Duncan Robinson.
Correct.
Is it Devin Vassell?
Devin Vassell, number 5. 25% for the sophomore San Antonio Spur getting the start. To be honest, Joe, let me pull this up because I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not sure if this is his first career start in the big league.
It's his first start this season.
It is. 7 starts last year in his 62 appearances as a rookie. But Devin Vassell, as Joe mentioned, his first start of the year. We've also got. Go ahead.
I'm just like, again, I entered small. Like the most people in one of my lobbies is 500 or 5,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Damien Lillard is 15% owned or 13% owned. I like that a lot. That is really, really, really nice. And I like Duncan Robinson for 15% as well.
Yeah, there are some notable ownerships here. The first being Tristan Thompson, 21%, right next to Dylan Brooks. DeJounte Murray, 15. Dwayne Dedmon, 13. Duncan Robinson, 12. Derek White, 12. Desmond Bain, 12. Damian Lillard, 11.6 is really nice. Max Strus held 11.5% ownership as well. Sadiq Bey at 9, I think, is pretty nice, as well as Jaren Jackson Jr. right there at 9. But Joe, 8.7% Cade Cunningham. I love that.
Wow.
I love that at 8.4.
Again, let me see what my lowest. So my lowest, again, because I'm only in my lowest is Lillard right now at 13%. Dylan Brooks 24, Duncan 16, and I have Tyrese Halliburton, Chimezi. So I this is a lot more spread out than we've seen the last two slates, which is encouraging. Like last night was so bad, and then with Drew Holiday being ruled out, or not even ruled out. Like I was at the game last night, and they're showing the teams come out of the tunnels, and there's no Drew Holiday. So I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then the Discord blew up, and everyone's in the protocols now. So Cavs now, we might, and again for slates going forward, like I would keep your eye on Bucks news now, because if 5 Cavs after playing the Bucks were put in the protocols this morning, like I don't know what's gonna happen. So we shall see.
Yeah. Luke Cornett signing with the Cavs. The Blazers will start Lillard, Powell, Little, Nance Jr., and Nurkic. Obviously, the game is already locked, but just for news' sake, Cart is out for injured Broncos quarterback Teddy Bridgewater.
No.
So that's not good. That's never good to see.
Especially with what he's had to come back from already.
Mm-hmm.
The last bit of, I guess this is blending NFL and NBA.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't buy the fights at all, but Darren Williams, I saw some highlights against Frank Gore.
Did he win that fight?
Oh yeah, I think he won by split decision. Darren Williams?
Yeah, he was a boxer as a kid.
Okay, so I didn't know he destroyed Frank. Like literally flew him out of the ring. Like it was electric. But he ended it by saying like, I probably looked like shit. I'm gonna let the professionals do this and go back and play basketball. So I like Darren Williams a lot.
Good on him. And it's wild to think back that I don't know, what was it, 9 or 10 years ago, when it was, kind of people were split on, is it Darren Williams or is it Chris Paul?
And that was when Darren Williams was on Utah and then New Jersey. He was good.
It was before, right? Like I think the height of that argument was before he made his way to the Nets.
I think it's when he was in Utah with Carlos Boozer.
But yeah, and fell off pretty hard. Obviously, not an argument anymore. But that'll do it for us. I know Joe wants to get back to watch this Packers-Ravens game.
And the Valley-oop in the background.
Oh, my God.
I had to get it in once.
Oh, man. I got nothing else to say to that. The people have spoken. The Twitter poll proved that the Valley-oop belongs to Phoenix. Look, you guys.
I just Googled the Valley-oop, and the first video that comes up is DeAndre Ayton's game winning out. The second is Giannis. So I get it. Okay.
Okay, I'm glad that like the Google algorithm isn't so strong to just feed you this propaganda that the Bucks somehow have the naming rights to the Valley-oop. But maybe one day you can have a cool name. For now, all you'll have to do is just cuddle that Larry O'Brien trophy that you guys got last year. So that's going to do it for us. We appreciate you guys sticking with us through all this news. I'm sure we'll get some more before these 8 p.m. Eastern games. So we will be in the Discord. We're about an hour out from the Sunday Night Football show here at FTN Daily. So if you're an NFL subscriber, make sure you set your clocks to tune into that. Some of the best showdown minds in the business here at FTN Daily. I know I'll be tuning in. I can't play Joe, but maybe we'll place a little bet or two here, listening to D-Bro, listening to Tenacious D Jones, all those guys over there. So, Joe, any final words for the people? What's the score of the Packers game?
Let me go double check right now. Final words while I'm doing this. If you have not checked out the new DFS pick tracker on FTN Daily, but I added an NFL prize. It's 14-14. I added an NFL prize picks, or excuse me, an NBA 4-way for Today I went Steven Adams over 8.5 boards, Tyrese Halliburton over 14.5 points, Melo over 21 fantasy points, and I believe the fourth was, I'm going to pull it up before I misquote someone, and it was Dame over 3.5 threes. I'm also adding an NFL one right now, and they are all free, so check them out. Our team's been red hot. There's a ton of plays, not just prize picks, it's underdog, it's jock market, it's top prop, like you name it, we have it. So go check it out completely for free on FTN Daily. It's a great tool.
Yeah. Who doesn't love a good foursome, Joe? With that, I'm Zach. That has been Joe. Shout out Thomas, our producer extraordinaire, giving us the update. Packers just scored up 20-14 on the Ravens. I need a Packers win here, right? Steelers get a win. AFC North. Yep. Something's brewing here. Something's brewing. All right. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. As always.
Let's get these beans.